Welcome to Occult Mysticism, your gateway to ancient wisdom. Today we explore Initiates of the Flame by Manly P. Hall, a profound journey into the esoteric teachings of spiritual initiation. Join us as we ignite these timeless truths. Subscribe for more mystical revelations. In his first published work, the 1922 volume entitled Initiates of the Flame, the great philosopher and mystic Manly P. Hall laid the cornerstone for a lifetime of esoteric inquiry. With a wisdom that belied his 21 years, he articulated a vision of a single, universal truth that flows like a river of fire beneath the diverse landscapes of the world's religions, mythologies, and mystery schools. This book, concise yet boundless in its scope, serves as a master key, unlocking the allegorical chambers of antiquity and revealing the luminous doctrine that has been preserved for ages by a silent and unseen fellowship, the Initiates of the Flame. This summary endeavors to present the profound teachings of this foundational text, paying homage to the author's unique style and his unparalleled ability to render the sublime comprehensible. It is a journey into the heart of the sacred, guided by the principle that he who lives the life shall know the doctrine. The book opens with a solemn contemplation of the rise and fall of civilizations. We are invited to look upon the ruins of Greece, the dust of Rome, and the faded grandeur of Egypt, and to seek a cause for their demise that lies deeper than politics or warfare. The author posits that the life of a nation, like the life of a man, is sustained by an inner light, a spiritual fire upon a sacred altar. When this flame is tended with reverence, nourished by virtue, and guarded by wisdom, a people flourishes. But when degeneracy, materialism, and ignorance are allowed to creep in, the flame flickers and grows dim. The priests, the guardians of the sacred mysteries, lose the word, the vibratory key to the divine power. As the last spark upon the altar grows cold, a mighty nation dies, drawing its shroud around itself to join the ghostly file of peoples that are dead. Yet the flame itself never dies. Being the very essence of God, the substance of life itself, it is eternal and indestructible. When abandoned by one people, it is carried by its faithful guardians to another shore, to a wilderness of land or sea, where it may once again become the radiant heart of a new and vital culture. This great spiritual fire, the author asserts, is the Spirit of God, the active, intelligent, nourishing power that animates all created things. Those who worship this flame, though they may be called heathens by the profane, are the true children of light, for God is light. Throughout the ages, there have always been those who have consecrated their lives to the service of this flame. These are the initiates, the purified ones who have renounced the lesser ambitions of the world in order to guard and protect the spiritual principle in man. They are the silent watchers, the invisible helpers, the custodians of the sacred fires that burn upon the altar of humanity. They walk the earth today as they have always walked it, unrecognized by the masses, yet forming an unbroken chain of succession from the priest-kings of the first temples. We see Orpheus, playing upon the seven-stringed lyre of his own perfected being, Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice greatest, holding his emerald tablet of divine revelation, Krishna, the illuminated one, teaching the mysteries of the soul upon the battlefield of life. The sublime Buddha, his heart more glorious than his saffron robe, and the gentle Master Jesus, his head surrounded by a halo of golden flame. Beside them stand Mohammed, Zoroaster, Confucius, Odin, and Moses, and countless others no less worthy. They are without creed or clan, for they serve but one great ideal. They came from the flame, and to the flame they have returned. They beckon to us, bidding us to join them in their selfless labor for the world. This book, as this summary shall show, is an attempt to trace this great spiritual thread, this thread of living fire, as it winds its way through all religions, binding them together in a common purpose. We find it in the legends of the Holy Grail and King Arthur's Round Table. We see it woven among the petals of the Rosicrucian rose and the sacred lotus of the East. It illuminates the temple pillars of Luxor and the secret vaults of the alchemists. There is, the author declares with resounding certainty, but one religion in all the world, the worship of God, the spiritual flame of the universe. He is known by many names, Amun, Iswari, God, but he is ever the same, and fire is his universal symbol. We, as human beings, are the flame-born, sparks thrown from the great wheel of the infinite. We have built around this inner fire a casing of flesh, a temple that has fallen into ruin, obscuring our own light. The purpose of the spiritual quest, the work of the student, is to rebuild this temple, to cleanse its altars, and to increase the light of the inner flame through love and service. until we too may proclaim ourselves sons of the Eternal. Within us burns that flame, and before its altar the lower man, the personality with its appetites and fears, must bow in faithful service. In serving this inner divinity, we grow, and our light expands until we take our rightful place among the true initiates of the universe, those who have offered their all to the infinite in the name of the flame within. It is to this one fire, the true creator of all sacred books, that this work is dedicated, the fire that blazes forth from God and is now hidden as a divine spark within each living thing. The fire upon the altar, the microcosmic and macrocosmic flame. In the first chapter of his profound treatise, Manly P. Hall establishes the foundational symbolism upon which the entire edifice of his philosophy is built, the mystery of the sacred fire. From the earliest dawn of human consciousness, when the first man lifted himself from the mists of ancient Lemuria and beheld the rising sun, fire has been revered as the supreme symbol of divinity. In every religion, in every age, we find the perpetual altar fires, guarded with zealous care by consecrated priests and vestals, for they understood that this visible flame was but the outer garment of an invisible and eternal power. The altar of burnt offerings is as old as the human race, a testament to man's innate recognition of the great fire spirit of the universe, the one whom the followers of Zoroaster called Ormuzd. The author illuminates a great division within the stream of humanity, two paths that correspond to the two great opposites of nature, fire and water. Those who follow the path of the heart, the way of faith and devotion, are known esoterically as the sons of Seth, and their sacrament is water. Those who follow the path of the mind, the way of action and reason, are the children of Cain, who, according to the ancient wisdom, was the spiritual offspring of Samael, the archangel of fire. It is this latter stream, the path of fire, that has flowed through the ages in the secret channels of the alchemists, the Hermetic philosophers, the Rosicrucians, and the Freemasons. The crucial revelation of this chapter is that the true altar is not a structure of stone, but the human body itself. The author states, "It is well for us to understand that we, ourselves, are the cube altar upon which and in which burns the altar fire." For centuries, the initiate of the fire path has been tasked with nourishing and guarding this spiritual flame within himself, just as the Vestals of ancient Rome watched day and night over the flame in Vesta's temple. This inner fire is the ever-burning lamp of the ancients, a symbol that has been profoundly misunderstood. The legendary lamps found in the catacombs of Rome, said to have burned for thousands of years without fuel, were not physical contrivances, but allegories of the spiritual fire within the imperishable soul body of the adept. The author provides a key to this mystery with a compelling illustration. The ever-burning lamp, he explains, is the spinal column of man. At its base is the fuel, and at its apex, in the brain, flickers the little blue and red flame of spiritual consciousness. As the lamps of the ancients were fed with the purest of olive oil, so the spiritual flame of man must be fed by a life of purity and altruism. The life essences, the vital fluids of the body, must be conserved, cleansed in the laver of purification, and turned upward to provide the fuel for this sacred lamp. Upon this inner altar, sacrifices must be made. The ancient hierophants who offered spices and incense were performing a symbolic ritual. The Masonic Brother of today still retains the censer among his symbols, yet few recognize themselves in it. The burning incense cubes represent the base metals and dense properties of the lower nature. The tiny spark of the spiritual flame, once kindled, slowly consumes these properties, transmuting them and offering their refined essence upon the altar of divinity. The author then addresses the biblical accounts of animal sacrifice, which have troubled many who aspire to a harmless life. He reveals that these were not literal slaughters, but cosmic allegories. When the ram or the bull was offered upon the altar, it represented the initiate, sacrificing the corresponding qualities within himself, the fiery impulses of Aries, the celestial ram, and the stubborn desires of Taurus, the celestial bull. The journey of initiation is a process of offering up, one by one, the lower animal instincts and desires upon the altar of one's own higher being. This leads to a profound decoding of the Masonic symbol of mortality, the spade, the coffin, and the sprig of acacia. The average person sees only the implements of death. The occult student, however, sees a map of his own anatomy and a guide to his own resurrection. The author directs our attention to the gravedigger's spade, for centuries a symbol of death. He then reveals its esoteric identity. The spade is the spinal column, and the spade-shaped pip on a deck of playing cards is a direct representation of the sacrum bone. This bone, whose very name means sacred, forms the base of the spinal column. Through the foramina, or openings, in this bone pass the roots of the spinal nerve, which are the very roots of the tree of life. It is the center that nourishes the lower vertebrae, the sacrum and coccygeal bones that dig the graves for all created things, by drawing the life force downward into generation and decay. The currents and forces that work through these lower spinal nerves, the author explains, must be transmuted and lifted upward to feed the altar fire at the positive, or upper, end of the spine. The focus of thought and emotion determines where this life energy is expended. If the lower emotions of lust, anger, and fear predominate, the flame upon the altar burns low and flickers out, for its fuel has been squandered in the lower centers. But when altruism, aspiration, and love predominate, these same forces are raised upward, passing through a purification that makes them fit fuel for the ever-burning lamp. Herein lies the great sin of letting the lamp go out. The pillar of flame that hovered over the tabernacle of the Israelites is this same spiritual flame that, when kindled, hovers above the purified man, lighting his way wherever he may go. This is the light that has gone out in modern humanity. This is the candle that has been hidden under the bushel of materialism. This is the true light of the world that dispels the darkness of ignorance and fear. The author's charge to the student is to let this light shine forth through a purified body and a balanced mind, for this light is the very life of our brother man. The great sun of our solar system, he explains, is one of these flames, which began no greater than the spark within ourselves and has grown to its present magnitude through the power of attraction and transmutation. The flame in man is the light that shineth in darkness, and by its radiance the hidden things of the cosmos are brought into view. Ignorance is dispelled in exact proportion to the spreading of this inner light. This is the lamp of the philosopher, by which he walks through the dark passageways of life without fear. Therefore, the student is admonished to watch the fire that burns upon his altar. He must make that altar, his body, as beautiful and harmonious as possible. He must offer upon it the frankincense and myrrh of his noble actions and selfless deed. He must use the spade of his will not to dig his own grave through passion, but to unearth the secret chamber of his soul. He must recognize that no matter how crystallized or dead his life may seem, the sprig of acacia, the promise of life and immortality, is hidden somewhere within. Though the flame may appear faint and cold, if he will but supply the fuel of a virtuous life, he will kindle it once more into a blazing fire, a living sacrifice to the living God, whose light will shine forth to help his brothers kindle their own flames in turn. The sacred city of Shambhala, the pilgrimage to the center. In the second chapter, Manly P. Hall guides the reader from the individual altar of the heart to the collective spiritual center of the planet, the sacred city of Shambhala. In every mythology and legendary religion of the world, there exists a concept of a sacred spot, a celestial headquarters, a place holier than all others. For the Norsemen, it was Valhalla, the city of heroes built high in the mountains of Asgard, connected to the earth by Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. For the Greeks, it was Mount Olympus, the cloud-veiled home of the 12 gods. The Knights of the Grail had their mystical castle, Mount Salvart, perched among the peaks of northern Spain. The sacred Mount Meru of the Hindus and Mount Sinai, where the law was given to Moses, are all symbols, the author reveals, of one universal ideal. All these sacred mountains and celestial cities are but reflections of the true spiritual home of our planetary life, the mysterious city of Shambhala. According to ancient Oriental legends, Shambhala is the seat of the Great White Lodge, the inner government of the world, where the great initiates meet in council to direct the evolution of humanity and the planet. Just as the Aesir of Scandinavia and the gods of Olympus were 12 in number, so the Great White Brotherhood is said to be composed of 12 masters who guide the affairs of men. This sacred center, it is said, first descended upon the earth when the polar cap, the first part of the globe to crystallize, became solid enough to support life. The author references the astronomical concept of the alternation of the poles, explaining that due to the shifting of the Earth's axis over vast periods of time, the sacred city has moved from its original polar location and is now said to be located ethereally in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia. This concept of a pilgrimage to a holy place is a universal theme. The author points to the Muslim pilgrimage to the Kaaba at Mecca, where the faithful endure untold hardships to honor the sacred stone. In India, countless pilgrims journey to holy rivers and shrines, just as Christian Templars once journeyed to the Holy Sepulchre. The outer journey, however, is but a symbol of a far more profound inner reality. The true student recognizes in these exoteric pilgrimages the great esoteric truth of the soul's journey. The spiritual consciousness in man is a pilgrim on the way to the inner Mecca. As this consciousness, this sacred fire, begins its ascent up the spinal column, it is like the pilgrim climbing the heights of Sinai or the Knight of the Grail returning to Mount Salvart. The spinal fire, in its upward wandering, stops at many shrines and visits many holy places. These shrines are the chakras, the great nerve centers or psychic ganglia along the spine. Each center is a seed ground of a great principle, a shrine of a divine essence within the microcosm of man. The path to heaven, like Jacob's ladder, is upward and inward, but the journey is not without its trials. After visiting the lower shrines, the spiritual fire must eventually cross the great desert. This corresponds to the Gethsemane of the higher man, a period of intense purification, suffering, and loneliness. Only after this trial is successfully passed does the pilgrim cross the sacred desert, and behold, rising before him in the heart of a celestial lotus, the golden city, Shambhala. The author then reveals the anatomical location of this sacred city within man. In the frontal sinus, the spreading of the bone between the eyes, there exists a peculiar gaseous material, a fine essence which is the vehicle of the spirit. This is the lost city in the sacred desert of the skull, connected to the lower world of the body by the rainbow bridge, the sutratma or silver cord. It is to this point in himself that the student is striving to rise. This is the great pilgrimage to Shambhala. And just as the terrestrial Shambhala is the center for the direction of our Earth, so this corresponding city in the head is the center for the governmental system of the human being. When any other principle, be it desire, passion, or ambition, governs man, he is not attuned to his own higher self. It is only when the gods, the higher principles, come down the rainbow bridge from this sacred city and labor with him, teaching him the divine arts and sciences, that he is truly receiving his divine birthright. The student in the Orient looks forward with eager longing to the time when he shall be allowed to worship before the gates of Shambhala, when he shall see the initiates in silent conclave, when the veil of Isis shall be torn away. But the author reminds us with great emphasis that all of these things must first happen within the self. If we would find the great initiates without, we must first find them within. If we would see the sacred city in the lotus blossom, we must first open that lotus within ourselves. This opening of the lotus is accomplished petal by petal, as the student purifies his nature and attunes himself to the higher principles within. The lotus, once again, is the spinal column. Its roots are deep in the earth of materiality. Its stem is the spinal cord, and its blossom is the brain. Only when the student consciously sends the purified energies of his life upward as nourishment can this lotus blossom forth with its 1,000 petals, giving out its spiritual fragrance. The author points to the common depiction of Oriental gods and Buddhas seated upon a lotus blossom. This signifies that they have fully opened within themselves that spiritual consciousness, the Kundalini fire, which has ascended to the head and bloomed. The little hats worn by Hindu deities are often shaped like an inverted flower, another reference to this same mystery of the unfolding spiritual consciousness. This is the meaning of the rod of Aaron that budded. The dead stick cut from the tree of life represents the seemingly inert spinal column of the average man. The buds are the 7 chakras, or spinal centers, which, when vivified by the rising spiritual fire, shine out as centers of light. In the Western world, the author explains, the lotus has been changed to the rose. The roses of the Rosicrucians, the roses of the Masonic degrees, and those of the Order of the Garter in England all stand for this same awakening of consciousness and the unfolding into full bloom of the soul qualities of man. When man opens this bud within himself, he finds, like the golden pollen in the heart of a flower, the wonderful spiritual city, Shambhala. When this pilgrimage of his spiritual fire is accomplished, he is liberated from the top of the mountain, as in the ascension of Christ. The spiritual man, freed by his pilgrimage from the wheel of bondage, rises upward from the midst of his disciples. The convolutions of his own brain, with the great cry of the initiate that has sounded through the mystery schools for ages, consummatum est, it is finished. With that cry, the true mystery of Shambhala is understood, and the new master joins the ranks of those who, robed in the white garment of their own purified soul bodies, have become pillars in the temple of their God. The mystery of the alchemist, the transmutation of the soul. In the 3rd chapter, Manly P. Hall draws back the veil on one of the most maligned and misunderstood traditions of the Western world, the royal art of alchemy. He paints a vivid picture of the medieval alchemist, a solitary figure toiling in a hidden laboratory surrounded by massive tomes and strange apparatus. This figure, often dismissed as a charlatan or a fool, was in truth a profound philosopher, a student of nature's deepest mysteries. At a time when free religious thought was punishable by death, these wise men concealed the history of the human soul and the science of its regeneration under the guise of chemical symbolism. Their quest for the philosopher's stone was not a greedy search for material wealth, but a sacred pilgrimage toward spiritual perfection. The author then performs his own act of intellectual alchemy, transmuting the symbols of the laboratory into the realities of the spiritual life. Man himself, he declares, has been an alchemist from the moment he first raised himself and pronounced himself human. The experiences of life, our joys and sorrows, triumphs and failures, are the chemicals with which the spiritual philosopher must experiment. Nature is the great, open book whose secrets he seeks to understand through the power of analogy. His own indwelling spiritual flame is the lamp by which he reads the cryptic symbols on its pages. His physical body is the furnace, the athanor, in which the great work is to be accomplished. His senses and organs are the test tubes and retorts, and his own aspiration and willpower are the flame from the burner that heats the crucible. The core of alchemical theory rests upon a trinity of principles: salt, sulfur, and mercury. The author decodes these for the modern student. Salt, he explains, was considered of the earth, earthy. It represents the physical body, the stable, material principle. Sulfur was a fire, the symbol of spirit, the volatile, active principle. Mercury, like the winged god of the Greeks, was the messenger, the mediating principle that unites the other two. Its color is purple, the perfect blending of the red of the body and the blue of the spirit. Mercury is the mind. Man, the author states, is the incarnated principle of mind, standing between the animal, which is a creature of emotion, and the gods, who are pure spirit. Man stands with one foot on the earth of his physical body and the other in the heavens of his spiritual nature. The mystic realizes that he himself is the philosopher's stone in the making. This stone is perfected when the salt and the sulfur, the body and the spirit, are permanently united and harmonized through Mercury, the link of mind. The hard knocks of life, the trials and tribulations of earthly existence, are the hammer and chisel that chip away the rough exterior of this stone, faceting it until it becomes a brilliant, diamond-like gem, capable of reflecting the light of truth from a million different angles. The ultimate achievement of the human spirit is the perfection of this living philosopher's stone. The other great alchemical secrets are similarly decoded. The elixir of life, which was said to confer immortality, is once again the spirit fire, or rather, the purified life essence that provides its fuel. The transmutation of base metals into gold is the process of transforming the lower man, with his leaden vices and desires, into the spiritual gold of enlightenment and self-mastery. This is accomplished through study, love, and service. In perfecting himself, the alchemist builds within his own soul the lost panacea for the world's woe. The author does not deny that some ancient alchemists may have literally created physical gold. He explains that this was possible based on the Hermetic principle that all things contain some part of everything else. Every grain of sand, every drop of water contains every element of the universe in some proportion. The alchemist, therefore, was not attempting to make something from nothing, but rather to extract and build upon that which was already latently present. This is a perfect analogy for the spiritual work. Man cannot create a soul from nothing. He can only work with the divine spark, the spiritual potential, that he already possesses. The living philosopher's stone, the perfected soul, is a thing of incandescent beauty, shining like a fire opal with a million different lights, radiating the golden and blue hues of the purified soul body. The author connects this alchemical symbolism to the emblems of Freemasonry. The five-pointed star with two clasped hands within it is a potent symbol of the philosopher's stone. The clasped hands represent the united man, in whom the higher and lower natures are no longer at war, but are working in a cooperative system for their mutual betterment. The five-pointed star is the soul body, the blazing star of the initiate, born of this sacred cooperation. It is the star of the morning that heralds the dawn of mastery, the reward that comes to those who follow in the footsteps of the ancient alchemist. The final stage of the alchemical process is often described as the chemical wedding, or the marriage of the sun and the moon. This, the author reveals, is the hermetic marriage of the spirit and the body, which takes place in man when the heart, the sun, the positive pole, and the mind, the moon, the negative pole, are joined in an eternal and harmonious union. From this mystical union of the two great luminaries within the microcosm, the divine child, the philosopher's stone, is born. The alchemist of today no longer hides in caves and cellars. His laboratory is the bustling world of human affairs. In the contacts of daily life, he sees nature's experiments carried on. He witnesses the mixing of metals in human relationships, and from the everyday book of life, he learns the lessons of divinity. By the flame of life's experiences, the steel of his spirit is tempered. As he progresses in his work, the light of outside help and the advice of others grows weaker, and he is thrown back upon his own resources. He must then use his own lamp, the light of his own developed consciousness. He must take the elixir of life which he has distilled from his experiences, and with it fill the lamp of his spirit, and holding it high, walk into the great unknown. If he has been a good and faithful servant, he will then graduate to a higher school, where he will learn the alchemy of divinity. Where once he worked with test tubes and bottles, he will then study worlds and globes, learning from the great alchemist of the universe the ultimate secrets of creation, the maintenance of form, and the building of worlds. The Egyptian initiate, the priest-king as master of self. In the 4th chapter, the author transports us back through the mists of time to the glorious empire of the Nile, to a period long before the sinking of Atlantis, when Egypt was a land of great truths, guided by the hand of the great white brotherhood. It was an age when the priest-king, a figure now considered half-mythical, reigned in the great temples of Thebes and Luxor. We are asked to picture the Great Hall of Luxor, its massive granite columns carved with the histories of the gods, and at its head, the pharaoh, robed in gold and priceless jewels, seated upon his throne. This was no mere temporal monarch. This was an initiate of the highest order. The author proceeds to decode the sacred insignia of the pharaoh, revealing each element as a symbol of profound spiritual attainment. On the pharaoh's forehead rested the uraeus, the coiled serpent of the initiate. This was not merely a symbol of royalty, but a sign that the sleeping serpent power in man, the kundalini, had been awakened and raised from the base of the spine to the brain. This is the same serpent that was raised in the wilderness by Moses, that all who looked upon it might live. It is the serpent power that, when coiled head downward around the tree of life, drives man from the Garden of Eden, but which, when raised upon the cross of the purified body, becomes the symbol of the Christ. The encircled serpent, with its tail in its mouth, is the crown of the ancient gods, showing that the two paths of the spirit fire, the Ida and Pingala currents, have been united in the central channel of the Sushumna, a union that takes place in the brain and confers mastery. The pharaoh was an initiate of Scorpio, and the serpent is the symbol of the transmuted Scorpio energy, the generative force which, when turned upward in the regenerated individual, becomes the creative fire of the spirit. The throne upon which he sat was a cube altar, indicating his mastery over the 4 elements of his physical body and the fourfold world of matter. He was a judge of the living and the dead, yet for all his power and glory he bowed in humble supplication to the will of the gods. In his hands he carried the triple scepter of the Nile, the shepherd's crook, the Anubis-headed staff, and the flail or whip. These were not mere emblems of office, but symbols of the powers he had mastered within himself. With the flail he had subjugated and controlled his physical body and its passions. With the shepherd's crook, he was the gentle guardian and keeper of his emotional body, guiding his flock of feelings with wisdom and love. With the Anubis-headed staff, Anubis being the jackal-headed god who guided souls through the underworld of the mind, he was master of his own mentality. Having first obeyed all the laws himself, he was worthy to wield the powers of government over others. Yet, with all his robes of state, the scarab upon his breast, and the all-seeing eye above his throne, there was nothing as precious to the priest-king as the simple triangular girdle or apron which was the symbol of his initiation. This apron, the author explains, carried the same symbolism as the Masonic apron of today. It signified the purification of the bodies. The white sheepskin, covering the generative area, symbolized that the seat of the lower emotions, the animal nature of Scorpio, had been cleansed and brought under the dominion of the purified will. This plain insignia, worn by many others below him in rank but equal to him in spiritual attainment, was the most precious of all things to the priest-king. His very being was a testament to his initiation, a living scripture written in the symbols of purification and mastery. He was a wise king of a wise people, a conscious instrument in the hands of the divine, for he was of the order of Melchizedek. But, as with all nations, the time came when selfishness and egotism entered the hearts of the king and the people. The hand of the Great White Brotherhood was slowly withdrawn, and the powers of darkness transformed the land of glory into a land of ruins. Mighty cataclysms shook the world, and the initiates carried the chosen people, those who remained true to the light, out of the land of darkness into a new promised land. Egypt, the land of glory, disintegrated into dust. What then of the priest kings who labored there? The author assures us they are still with us. Those who were leaders before are leaders now, if they have continued to walk the path of light. Though the physical scepter is gone and the priestly vestments have molded away, the true priest-king still walks the earth with the same dignity, power, and childlike simplicity that once made him great. He no longer wears the robes of his order, but he bears the true insignia of his rank in the qualities of his soul. The coiled serpent on his brow has given place to the radiance of knowledge and love. The hand that once bestowed the riches of an empire now performs small, anonymous acts of kindness. Though he no longer carries the physical scepters of self-mastery, he manifests that mastery in every moment of his daily life. The altar fires at Karnak have long been dead, but the true fire within his own heart still burns, and before it he still bows in reverence. He is never alone, for the priests in white and the counselors in blue, the invisible host of the Great Lodge, still march with him and whisper words of strength when he is in need. The author asks us to consider our own intuitive reactions to people. Have we not met learned people who impressed us as fools, and simple people who we felt were profoundly wise? Have we not been drawn to some regardless of appearance and repelled by others in spite of their charms? These feelings, he suggests, are our soul's recognition of the true insignia of rank, the spiritual status that no loss of title or position can destroy. These are the true kings, with or without crowns, and they manifest their rank not by arrogance, but by the soul qualities they radiate. The purity of their lives still shines forth from those who once wore the sacred apron. Though the physical symbol has long since rotted away, its spiritual counterpart radiates in their daily lives, proving beyond all dispute that they were and are priest kings. We find them in every walk of life, in high places and in the mire. But wherever they are still mouthpieces for the gods. The life of the Master Jesus is the supreme example of one who was a true king even when his only crown was a wreath of thorns. The initiations, the author concludes, still continue in the invisible ether around the Great Pyramids. The initiate still receives the insignia of his rank before the fire within himself. Upon the burning altar of his own higher being, he lays his worldly crowns and scepters, his hates and his fears, and sanctifies his life as a priest-king, swearing to serve none but his own higher self, the God within. The Ark of the Covenant, the preservation of sacred truth. In the 5th chapter, Manly P. Hall turns his attention to one of the most revered and mysterious symbols of the ancient world, the Ark of the Covenant. He immediately dispels the common misconception that this sacred object belongs exclusively to the Jewish nation. The Ark, or a sacred box containing holy relics, is a universal symbol, a birthright of every country that has been a custodian of the wisdom teachings. The ancient Chaldeans and Phoenicians knew of it. India celebrated its equivalent in the symbolism of the lotus, and the ancient Egyptians told the story of the moon god Osiris being imprisoned in an ark or chest. In all the mystery religions of the world, the ark represents the fountainhead of wisdom, the physical anchor point for a great spiritual power. Over it, the Shekinah's glory, the visible presence of God, hovers as a column of flame by night and a pillar of smoke by day. The author explains that the history of the ark is the history of truth itself. When a civilization is founded by those who love the truth, the ark is present among them. But in every creed and religion, the danger of crystallization arises. Small groups separate themselves from their brother man, clinging to old forms and refusing to advance with the new light. Whenever this crystallization occurs, the spirit of truth is withdrawn. The priest-kings and initiates, the silent bearers of the sacred chest, carry the ark out of the old, dying civilization and, surrounded by those who remain faithful, transport it to other lands and among other peoples, where a new culture may be born. The staves, or carrying poles, of the Israelite ark were never to be removed from it, signifying that the divine truth is ever a pilgrim, ever on the move, until it can finally be placed in a perfected and permanent home, the true Temple of Solomon. This sacred truth is always carried towards the rising sun, towards the new dawn of spiritual enlightenment. Nations are born of those who love the truth and are buried when they forget it. The author then makes a bold and significant statement regarding his own time. The silent bearers, he claims, have once again taken up the sacred ark and the Shekinah's glory. In a solemn file, they have moved across the waters and brought it to the new world of the West. A call has sounded through the universe, and those who are true to their own higher principles are gathering around the sacred chest. A beautiful spiritual temple is being built in the Americas, loved and guarded by those who are laboring for humanity. The staves are still in the ark, however, signifying that its presence is not yet permanent. The opportunity is now confronting the Western world. The wisdom of the ages is knocking at the door, seeking those who will follow it. Whether the word of the Lord will remain with a nation depends upon its own actions, and the actions of a nation are the collective actions of its individuals. If the Spirit of truth finds few that will answer its call of service and brotherhood, then its priests will lift the staves again, and the sacred work will go out into other lands, leaving the old one to be swallowed up into oblivion. Every individual, by his daily actions, is casting a vote for or against the presence of the light. Having established the cosmic significance of the ark, the author then reveals its microcosmic meaning. Man, once again, is the ark. Within him are the three sacred principles represented by the ark's contents. The tablets of the law, the 10 Commandments, represent the Father principle, the divine law that governs the universe. The pot of manna, the heavenly food that sustained the Israelites in the desert, represents the Son or Christ principle, the living nourishment of the soul. The rod of Aaron that budded represents the Holy Spirit, the creative life force, the power of resurrection. However, the author points out a crucial detail from the Old Testament. When the Israelites became crystallized and disobedient, the pot of manna and the rod that budded were removed from the ark, and all that was left were the stone tablets of the law. This is a perfect allegory for what happens to the individual. When a person crystallizes in his beliefs, when he shuts his mind to new light and excludes strangers and their ideas, he shuts out the very life force that was flowing to him. All that he has left are the tablets of the law, the material reasons, the dead letter of doctrine from which the living, spiritual life has gone. The true temple of Solomon is the perfected human body, the perfected universe, and the perfected soul. This temple is the only fitting and permanent shrine for the living ark. There, at the head of a great cross, the intersection of spirit and matter, the ark is finally placed. There, in man, it becomes permanently fixed. The staves of polarity upon which it was carried through the wilderness of life are removed, and it becomes a living thing, a permanent place where man converses with his God. The mercy seat, the lid of the ark, was situated between the wings of 2 kneeling cherubim. It is here that man speaks with his God, just as the high priest of the tabernacle spoke to the Spirit of the Lord. This mercy seat is located in the brain of man. Man, as the purified priest, arrayed in the robes of his order, the garments of his own soul, can enter the Holy of Holies of his own consciousness. There, in the darkened chamber of the skull, lighted only by the jewels of his own spiritual development, he converses with the Most High, the true spiritual essence within himself. We are all working towards this state. The time will come when each person will know the mystery of the ark for himself. Through purification, the student will be led through the veil into the Holy of Holies and be enveloped by the light of truth. This is his birthright, which he sold for a mess of pottage. The ark, that great spiritual principle, surrounded by its loving workers, is calling all to follow it. When through materiality and degeneracy a great people are destroyed or a continent sinks, those that are true are called to gather around the ark. As its faithful servers, they are led out of the land of darkness into a new world, a promised paradise. When the student allies himself with the powers of light, when he becomes a channel for its expression and radiates it from himself to all who need it, then indeed will the light protect him, and he shall become a son of God. Knights of the Holy Grail, the quest for the soul. In the 6th chapter, Manly P. Hall turns to the great myth cycles of medieval Europe, revealing the legends of King Arthur and the Holy Grail to be profound allegories of the soul's journey and the path of initiation. He urges the reader to look beyond the surface narrative of these tales, which are now often relegated to the status of children's fairy stories, and to perceive the cosmic truths concealed within. The story of Parsifal, the guileless fool who becomes king of the sacred cup, is the story of every aspirant who must master temptation to achieve self-mastery. The wanderings of Ulysses, the prophecies of the Jews, and the legends of the American Indians all tell the same great connected truth, each in a language suited to its people. The summary begins with the coming of King Arthur. The author introduces Merlin the magician, the wise man who oversaw the young king's upbringing. Merlin represents the guiding hand of the elder brothers of humanity, the Great White Lodge, who, recognizing that a great soul had incarnated, consecrated themselves to preparing him for his mission. It was under Merlin's direction that the famous sword in the stone and anvil appeared in the city square. The inscription on the sword read, "Whoso pulleth out this sword of this stone and anvil is right wise king, born of England." The author then decodes this divine allegory. The cube stone, as established in previous chapters, is the physical body, the ashlar of the Masons. The anvil is experience, the hard surface of life upon which the soul is tempered. The sword is spirit. He who would be king in the true spiritual sense must first demonstrate his divine power by freeing the sword of spirit from the dense casings of the lower man and the material world. It is the same symbol later encountered by Sir Galahad, the personification of the purified man, who, though he came to court without a weapon, armed himself with a sword that he drew from a block of stone floating down the river of life. Galahad had the strength of 10 because his heart was pure, and the knight of today must follow this same path of purification. The enchanted sword Excalibur, given to Arthur by a hand rising from the water, represents light and truth, the celestial weapon of the true initiate. The round table of King Arthur, a wedding gift, is another potent symbol. This was not an earthly marriage, but the mystical wedding of the spiritual Arthur and the intellectual Guinevere within the initiate himself, when the spirit and the body are united eternally. The author points to the fact that on the round table still preserved in England, a beautiful rose is painted in the very center, a direct link to the Rosicrucian philosophers of fire and a clue to the table's true meaning as a symbol of the zodiac and the 12 great creative hierarchies. The focus then shifts to the history of the Holy Grail itself. This sacred cup from which Christ drank at the Last Supper and which caught his blood at the crucifixion was said to have been fashioned from a great emerald that fell from the crown of Lucifer during his battle with the archangel Michael in heaven. After the crucifixion, Joseph of Arimathea carried the cup and the sacred spear of the Passion into Europe, and after many centuries of wandering, his descendants enshrined them in the temple of Mount Salbart in northern Spain. It is around this cup and spear that the legends of Parsifal and Arthur are woven. The Grail cup, the author reveals, is the symbol of the creative force of nature. It is also the symbol of the human body, which contains the blood of Christ, that is, the transmuting life force of the solar spirit, which is slowly turning the body into soul. The sacred spear is again the creative life force, the phallic symbol of generation. In the hands of the evil magician Klingzor, the profane man, this force wounds and causes suffering. But when wielded by the pure Parsifal, the regenerated initiate, it heals the very wound that it caused. A great lesson is being taught here, but the average person is unwilling to see himself in the story. We do not realize that we are the ones whom the elder brothers must use in the fight against the forces of evil. The dragons and ogres of the legends are our own lower natures, which we must overcome and master. The hand-to-hand combat of the knights of old for a lady's hand is the eternal struggle between the higher and lower man for the soul within. The knight of today, the spiritual aspirant, may not realize that the white armor he must wear is his own purified body, which becomes proof against all the attacks of vice and passion. His shield is truth, a perfect protection for the inner man. His strong right arm is the spiritual power he has developed within, and the sword he uses is the light of the spirit, which dispels the darkness of ignorance and the demons of lust. The sacred spear and cup which he serves are the two poles of the creative life force within himself, which he develops and masters as he serves his fellow men. The Holy Grail is our own body, and within it is the life blood of the Sun Spirit of the universe. Each day that we live, we perpetuate the Last Supper, and in all our thoughts and actions, we drink again the blood of Christ, the life power of the cosmos. Far from the world of the uninitiated, the 12 elder brothers of mankind, sitting around the circular table of the universe, watch the knights in their battle of life. The time comes when the student, having finished his work, is liberated at the foot of the Grail. There the candidate stands, robed in the armor of spirit and the pure white of a cleansed body. Then the cloth is lifted from the sacred cup, and he is illuminated by a light which would have killed him had he seen it without purification. When our loved ones pass into the great unknown, there stands the brother of the Grail, the invisible helper, who through lifetimes of labor has earned the right to become a member of that great band who gather around the table of the king, and who, while their bodies are asleep, still labor in their great search for light and truth, praying for the day when they too shall become kings of the Holy Grail. The mystery of the pyramid, the composite symbol of man. In the final and culminating chapter of Initiates of the Flame, Manly P. Hall unveils the profoundest secrets of the Great Pyramid of Gizeh, presenting this ancient wonder of the world as the ultimate composite symbol of man. He begins by stating one of the great secrets of the Initiates. Every sacred object or structure outside of man stands for some organ, function, or principle within man. The Great Pyramid, the oldest building on the surface of the earth, is the grand symbol of composite man as a complete unit. First, the author considers the pyramid from an exterior standpoint. From a distance, it appears as one great monolithic stone. As we draw closer, however, we see that it is composed of thousands of smaller stones, each one carefully cut and fitted into place. Herein lies the first great likeness between the pyramid and man. We think of a person as a single unit, but upon closer examination, we find that he is a commonwealth of billions of smaller units, cells, atoms, and life streams, all working in harmony. A successful life, viewed from afar, seems like a single achievement, but it is in fact composed of countless small victories and noble efforts joined together. As thousands of workmen were used in building the physical pyramid, so unnumbered invisible workmen are constantly at work building our bodies, the living temples of the soul. The author notes that while there are many pyramids and mounds across the world, from Central America to Britain, there is only one true Great Pyramid. The others in Egypt were but copies, used as tombs for the pharaohs. But no body was ever found in the Great Pyramid of Cheops, nor were there ever any signs that it was intended for such a purpose. It was a temple of initiation. To understand its structure, the author asks us to imagine the pyramid laid flat. It becomes a square at the center with 4 triangles attached to its sides. This base square represents the 4 elements of which man's bodies are composed: earth, water, fire, and air, or their chemical equivalents, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Upon this fourfold base, the 4 bodies of man are raised, each from its own element. The physical body is raised from the earth, the vital or etheric body from the water, the emotional or desire body from the fire, and the mental body from the air. The 4 triangles have a total of 12 lines, which stand for the 12-fold constitution of the perfected man: the threefold body, the threefold mind, the threefold soul, and the threefold spirit. These also correspond to the 12 signs of the zodiac. Out on the desert stands the Sphinx, the guardian of the threshold. The author identifies this enigmatic figure with the dweller on the threshold described by Bulwer Lytton. The Sphinx is a composite creature, with the body of a bull, the claws of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the head of a man. These are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac: Taurus, the bull; Leo, the lion; Scorpio, whose higher symbol is the eagle; and Aquarius, the man. The Sphinx represents the 4 lower bodies of man, the animal nature from which the human spirit must rise. It is the riddle of the ages, and man himself is the answer. The mastery of this 4-fold lower self is the prerequisite for entering the pyramid, the temple of the higher man. In ancient times, an underground passage was said to connect the Sphinx to the Great Pyramid, symbolizing that the gateway to the spirit is through the mastery of the bodies. The author then guides us into the pyramid's interior, to the 3 great chambers that are of interest to the student. The lowest chamber, deep below the surface of the earth, is called the pit. Above it is the Queen's chamber, and highest of all is the King's chamber. Here again, we find a perfect correlation with the constitution of man. The 3 chambers are the seats of the threefold spirit. The pit, the lower room, corresponds to the generative system, the center of physical creation, which is under the control of the Holy Spirit. The Queen's chamber corresponds to the heart and circulatory system, the seat of the Christ principle of love and life. The King's chamber corresponds to the brain, the throne of the Father principle, the divine will and intelligence. In the King's chamber stands the mysterious stone coffer or sarcophagus, the meaning of which has baffled scholars for centuries. The student of the mysteries recognizes it as a symbol of the 3rd ventricle in the brain, a sacred cavity which is the seat of certain spiritual faculties. This coffer was also used as a symbolic tomb during the highest degree of initiation. As is still faintly echoed in Masonic rituals today, the candidate was laid in the coffer, buried in the earth, and then resurrected, a powerful drama symbolizing the death of the lower personal self and the liberation of the immortal higher self. It is said that both Moses and Jesus were initiated in this manner within the Great Pyramid. The most profound mystery of all, however, concerns not what is present in the pyramid, but what is missing. On the very top of the great structure is a flat platform, some 30 feet square. The true apex, the capstone, is missing. The author points to the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States, which also depicts the pyramid with its top separated from the base. This missing stone is the true stone, which is the head of all the corners. It is the spirit in man, the divine consciousness, which fell from its high position at the dawn of material existence and has been lost beneath the rubbish of the lower man. This is the true capstone, now hidden in the pit of man's lower nature, which he must exhume, polish, and place once again as the crown of his spiritual pyramid. He can only do this when he calls the thousands of workmen within himself together, his thoughts, feelings, and energies, and binds them to the service of the higher man. Lucifer, the light-bringer, rejected by the ignorant as the devil, is the one who, through the planet Mars, sends man the dynamic energy of desire, which man himself must transmute from the fire of passion into the flame of spirit. With the tools of the craft virtue, study, and self-discipline, he must cut and polish his own being into the perfect capstone of the universal temple. The author concludes with a poignant analogy. The beautiful, smooth casing stones that once made the pyramid a dazzling, seamless monument were stripped away centuries ago to build the cities nearby. In the same way, the beautiful soul body of man, the casing stones of his spiritual temple, has been sacrificed that he might have material things. As we look upon the mighty ruin in Egypt's sands, broken by ages of neglect, we should remember our own inner temple, whose cornerstone is also missing and whose walls are crumbling from neglect. The lesson of the pyramid is a call to action, to hasten to perfect our own inner pyramid, to cap it with the stone of spirit, to offer upon its altars our sacrifice to the great sun spirit, and to bury our lower nature in its ancient coffer. As we draw to the close of this exploration of Manly P. Hall's Initiates of the Flame, we find that the diverse and fascinating symbols we have encountered, the altar and its fire, the sacred city of Shambhala, the alchemist's stone, the priest, king's scepter, the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, and the Great Pyramid are not separate and unrelated mysteries. They are, in truth, different facets of a single magnificent gem. They are varied allegories that all point to one central glorious reality, the divine flame that is the birthright and essence of every human soul. The author, with the masterful touch of a true Illuminatus, has demonstrated that the thread of this one living fire is woven through the tapestry of every sacred tradition the world has ever known. The book is a testament to the unity of truth, a powerful antidote to the poisons of sectarianism and dogma that have for so long set brother against brother. The ultimate purpose of this work, however, is not merely to inform the intellect or to entertain the imagination with curious lore. It is a call to action. It is a summons to the soul. The author does not present these teachings as a subject for passive academic study, but as a practical blueprint for living. To read of the alchemist transmuting lead into gold is to be reminded that we must transmute the lead of our own vices into the gold of virtue. To learn of the Knight of the Grail questing for the sacred cup is to be inspired to begin our own quest for the perfection of our own soul. To understand the mystery of the pyramid's missing capstone is to be charged with the supreme task of our lives, to find that lost stone within ourselves and restore it to its rightful place as the crown of our being. The great dictum that stands at the beginning of the book, "He who lives the life shall know the doctrine," is the key to the whole mystery. True knowledge, the gnosis of the ancients, is not something that can be poured into the mind like water into a cup. It is the fruit of experience. It is the result of a profound inner transformation. We can read 1,000 books on the nature of the sacred fire, but we will never truly know it until we have kindled it upon the altar of our own hearts. We can memorize the virtues of the saints and sages, but we will never possess them until we have forged them in the furnace of our daily lives upon the anvil of experience. The path of the initiate of the flame is therefore a path of doing, of being, of becoming. It is the path of the living alchemist, who sees every experience as a chemical, every interaction as an experiment in the great laboratory of life. It is the path of the practicing priest, who makes his own body a temple and his every action a sacrament. It is the path of the questing knight, who battles daily with the dragons of his own lower nature and dedicates his strength to the service of the good, the beautiful, and the true. This, then, is the final message of this remarkable book. It is a charge to each reader to cease being a mere spectator of the spiritual life and to become an active participant. We are all called to be guardians of the flame, to tend it faithfully within ourselves, to protect it from the winds of passion and the storms of desire. and to so increase its light that it may shine forth as a beacon to guide the footsteps of our fellow travelers who are still lost in the darkness. In a world that often seems to be sinking into the shadows of materialism, strife, and despair, the message of Initiates of the Flame is more vital and necessary than ever. It reminds us that within each human being, however humble or fallen, there lies a spark of the divine, a hidden glory waiting to be revealed. It assures us that we are not alone, but are part of a great and ancient fellowship of souls dedicated to the upliftment of all life. And it places in our hands the key to our own liberation and the sacred responsibility for our own becoming. To read this book is to be invited to join that unseen fellowship, to take up the sacred quest, and to dedicate one's life to the service of that one eternal, universal, and all-consuming fire. It is to begin the journey of living the life so that we too may one day truly know the doctrine. Thank you for exploring Initiates of the Flame with Occult Mysticism. Share your reflections below and join our community. Like, subscribe, and tap the bell for more esoteric wisdom. Until next time, keep seeking the light.